Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, there is a big shift coming in Diablo 4 in just a few days, and the main reason of that is of course the release of the Abattoir of Zir coming on December 5th, right around the corner from now. But while this event itself is going to be a seasonal thing, meaning it will end before Season 2 does, and there are no plans to bring it back afterwards, there are some more meaningful long-term changes also happening right now that could slip under the radar as a result. Specifically, last night we had the reveal of the patch notes for patch 1.2.3 coming up next week, the one that specifically does contain the abattoir itself. And while it does contain some things that we expected, it also has a pretty big thing that we were not warned about. And don't worry, it's absolutely a good thing without a doubt. That said, let's talk about these patch notes then, as well as any other news going on right now in the Diablo 4 world over the past couple of days. Starting off, before we even talk about the patch then, for anyone who did miss it in the campfire chat stream that happened a couple of days ago, this is big enough of news that is worth making sure that you do actually catch it. Last time that we talked about news, there was all this hullabaloo about a survey going around from the developers, part of which mentioned the possibility of both adding stash tabs that would only be available to people who paid for a certain version of the expansion, and also early access to functional items such as legendaries or uniques before other players could get them. Again, only if you paid money. This obviously caused quite an uproar in the community, deservedly so, but the devs made a point of specifically stating in the stream that they do not at all plan to add pay to win in any way, and they specified that that does include stash tabs. So whatever was going on with this survey, it seems that that part of it at least will not be something that we need to be concerned about. And honestly, I appreciate the way that they saw us talking about it as a community and nipped that in the bud as quick as they could, because yeah, that is absolutely a big deal. And if they had stayed silent on it, it would only have made us quite a bit more concerned. With that out of the way then, let's talk about the patch notes themselves. First and foremost, obviously the patch will come with the Abattoir of Zir. If you want more info on this, we'd have a video covering the live demo done by the developers that showed the activity in full, but that is of course the main pillar of why this patch is important. Aside from that, another thing that we knew was going to be coming is this right here. They are adding a button when talking to the occultists and looking at the enchanting menu to actually open up a window that shows you all the different possible affixes that you can roll on each piece of gear. People who have played a ton are already probably aware of what these are, what can roll on each piece, and just sort of have a list of them in their head so they don't even have to think about it really. But this is just a nice bit of clarity, a nice bit of convenience, and more than anything, it serves to help out newer players, or even just players who have not yet dived into the full deep end when it comes to complete proper itemization on a build. That said, that is of course especially important with the timing that it has, because Abattoir of Zir is promising to be more difficult than any other content we currently have in the game, and so of course a part of preparing for that as players and being actually able to complete it is going to be making sure that you have your gear sorted out as properly as you can. And again, this tool will be fantastic for people who have never sat down and really had to work that stuff out before. Then we have the big surprise of this patch, one that may not seem like a massive deal at first glance, but will have a major lasting effect on the game, which is this right here, a major increase in Glyph experience rewarded at the end of Nightmare Dungeons almost across the board, but of course with a significant weight towards increasing the higher tiers more in order to incentivize actually doing higher tier Nightmare Dungeons more often. As it currently stands before this patch is applied, there is no real reason to do any Nightmare tier higher than your comfort zone, even for farming Glyph XP, because the difference between say a tier 70 and a tier 80 just wasn't at all worth the actual difference in difficulty. As a result, the developers have decided that they just want to find a good way to actually convince people to do higher tier Nightmare Dungeons more regularly, and of course the best way to do that is to reward more Glyph XP. I do agree with that. As you can see from this list here that they've laid out, the change is relatively minimal up to tier 50, but then from tier 50 and upwards it's actually quite a big difference, with tier 100 being increased more than 50% from what it is currently. So this really is an actually good reason to do higher tiers, and arguably more importantly, it means that when people are actively going out of their way to farm Glyph experience, the process should just go a fair amount faster in general now because of these changes. The thing is, because this happens at the same time as the Abattoir of Zir, it's sort of just a little bit late to have a proper effect right now in this season for two reasons. Firstly, the main reason that people had to upgrade their glyphs to level 21, the main reason it was a priority outside of, completionism, was, well, to prepare for the Abattoir of Zir, which we've known to be coming out on the 5th, and so a large amount of the people who are actively still playing have of course already dealt with their glyphs, already upgraded them to max level. But then on top of this change is happening when Abattoir of Zir drops, and well, we know for a fact now that completing tier 1 of Abattoir of Zir provides you with 1,000 glyph experience, which is an absolutely insane number, and that is 3 times more than even the tier 100 Nightmare Dungeon will be after these changes. So essentially, anyone who is strong enough to do tier 1 Abattoir of Zir will never see these changes matter, because they just will not matter to them. And given that the biggest impact that these changes have is on higher tiers, and that anyone who can complete a tier 100 nightmare dungeon should be fully capable of taking on tier 1 of Abattoir of Zir, it sort of just makes this change here have a very, very low impact comparative at its time of release. That said, it is important to think about the bigger picture here. Abattoir of Zir will be around for around a month and a half, closing down just before the end of the season, but this buff here to Nightmare Dungeon Glyph experience will not be going away. It will still be in effect next season, and next season is when I expect most people to actually experience this change properly, and I can't imagine anyone being upset at all at getting through some of the more tedious busy work of power gain in a quicker manner than we had before to do so. Past that, the rest of the patch was just a bunch of bug fixes, some accessibility adjustments, some fixes to dungeons, including messing with the numerical values of some of the elemental damage affixes on Nightmare Dungeon sigils that scaled maybe a little bit too high or sometimes a little bit too low, some gameplay bug fixes including removing the occasionally invincible treasure goblins, and then some seasonal fixes including the long-awaited proper fix to the issue where potent blood from blood fountains would occasionally just land in inaccessible positions. Now this is fixed not only for the open world, but also for other activities such as dungeons as well, which could have these in them too, and were not previously functioning correctly. Past that, it was just UI and UX fixes that aren't particularly massive, and then miscellaneous changes such as the classic various visual, performance, and stability improvements. Aside from the patch then, we just have a couple of tweets from devs, very small ones. This is something that we have talked about quite a bit in the past, but even so, I always see comments asking or concerned about this. Is Ball Lightning as a build going to be nerfed this season? And Adam Fletcher, the Global Community Development Director, states once again that Ball Lightning is safe. No nerfs will happen this season. This isn't new information, but consistent confirmation about this tells us that nothing is changing. At least they haven't changed their minds at all, and that's good to know. Then we just have someone mistakenly asking where the helltide uptime change is that was talked about on the Campfire Chat stream. And this does happen a lot. When the developers do a stream, they will talk about changes coming soon, changes coming up a bit later, and then changes for quite a bit later down the line. And often people just hear the change and not pay attention to the rest of it, not knowing when it will happen, and of course assume that everything talked about will happen instantly. And nope, this change was not set to happen right now. It is set for Season 3, so for anyone else wondering about that, helltide changes are coming in Season 3, not now with this patch. We do have to wait for that a little bit. And that just about does it then, everyone. With the excitement of Abattoir of Zir coming up next week on December 5th, we have gotten just the full patch notes ahead of time, including quite a welcome surprise as far as a buff to Glyph experience gain across the board. It's great to see that even in this final major patch of the season, there are just no balance changes at all, too. And it does make sense as well, because obviously they've balanced Abattoir of Zir around what players were showing themselves capable of doing earlier in the season when they were putting the activity together. And so if they rebalanced players, it would just immediately throw off the whole event from start to finish. So this is definitely the right choice. All in all, I am personally pretty excited to try out the Abattoir of Zir myself, but what about all of you? Are you ready to go in and mess up a vampiric army, or are you just sitting on the sidelines, uninterested in actually playing yourself until next season comes around? Either way, hopefully this patch contains something positive for you in some way, something that will have a genuinely good effect on your time with the game in the future. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.